Welcome to another deep dive, everybody. Today we're going to unpack some reports coming out of Thailand about the Russia-Ukraine conflict.
Oh, wow.
It's always interesting to see how different parts of the world, cover these big global events.
Yeah.
And this Thai source definitely has some unique perspectives that I'm really excited to dive into.
Yeah, that's always refreshing to get that different perspective because it really does make you think about things in a new light.
For sure.
Right.
So this source kind of like jumps right into the deep end, talking about Putin's reaction
Okay.
to that alleged Ukrainian drone strike on Kazan,
Right.
which, if you can imagine, is a city over 1,000 kilometers inside of Russia.
Yeah, that's pretty deep into the country.
It's like the distance from Paris to Berlin. So
Wow.
it's not an insignificant.
That's a statement for sure.
Yeah, it's quite a statement.
Yeah.
And Putin, he didn't hold back at all in his response.
Right.
The source actually quotes him from a televised address where he said, "No matter what they try to destroy, they will face destruction many times greater, and they will regret what they're trying to do in our country." And this was, he was meeting with leaders from Tatarstan, which is the region where Kazan is located.
I see. So playing to a certain audience there.
Yeah, kind of using that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that kind of language, you have to analyze that, right? Like, what's the motivation there? Is it a genuine escalation? Is it just playing to that domestic audience, needing to kind of project strength and control for his own people? Or is there a message being sent to the West as well?
Yeah, it seems like it could be all of those things.
Right.
On the one hand, you have the Russian people who he needs to reassure that he's in control.
Absolutely.
And then on the other hand, it's kind of like a warning shot to Ukraine and their allies, don't underestimate me.
Yeah, like, don't push this any further, don't test me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's where things get even more interesting. So while we see this, like, fiery rhetoric in response to the drone strike, on the ground, Russia's claiming major advances in eastern Ukraine.
Okay.
Specifically, they say they've captured Lozova in the Kharkiv region and Krasny in the Donetsk region.
I see. So they're kind of escalating in a different way, like boots on the ground, actual advances.
Exactly. And Krasny, or Sunsivka, as it's also known, is particularly important strategically because it's very close to Kharkov,
Right.
which is like a vital resource hub that Russia has been trying to capture.
Oh, so this is a significant development then.
Yeah, very significant.
Yeah.
So it's not just like a symbolic victory. It has like real implications for their efforts to control the entire Donetsk region.
Exactly. Yeah. Because if they can control the resources, the logistics, that's a game changer.
Exactly. And it's really interesting to see this, juxtaposition of like the really strong words in response to the drone strike. And then at the same time, making these advances, these concrete gains on the ground.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder if there's a change in strategy.
Yeah.
Like, maybe they're using the rhetoric to manage the optics of the drone strike, but they're really focused on those tangible military objectives.
It's almost like they're trying to control the narrative on one hand while actually gaining ground on the other.
Absolutely. You have to consider that a domestic audience, the need to project strength and control.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, those boots on the ground making progress in Donbas, that's a core objective for them.
Yeah, it really makes you think about what Ukraine's strategy is here.
Right. Like, how are they going to counter that?
We've been talking a lot about Russia.
Yeah.
But we haven't even touched on Ukraine's perspective yet and what they're thinking.
It really makes you think about, like, what their strategy is, right?
Yeah.
We can't forget that Ukraine's facing some, like, serious challenges here, especially when it comes to manpower and ammunition, shortages.
Yeah, the source talks about that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a sobering reminder of just, like, the reality of the situation on the ground for them.
Yeah, but even with those limitations, it seems like they're not backing down.
Yeah, not at all.
Like, that drone strike on Kazan, if it really happened,
Right.
that's a pretty bold move, considering the risks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They know that there's going to be potential retaliation.
Right.
But they're still doing it, so what are they trying to say here?
Yeah, it's like a message, right? It's like, look, we can hit you.
Mm-hmm.
We can hit you where it hurts.
Deep inside your territory.
And disrupt that feeling of security that you have.
Yeah, and maybe it's also a signal to their allies in the West.
Oh, totally.
That they need more support, in the face of these shortages.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, look, we're still in this fight. We need you to help us.
We need the resources to keep going.
Yeah.
And they're playing a different game here.
Right.
Because they have to be more strategic.
Absolutely.
More creative with how they approach this,
They have to.
with those shortages.
Yeah, they can't just go toe-to-toe
Right.
with a larger force. They have to think outside the box.
Yeah, prioritize defensive positions.
Yeah.
Utilize like guerrilla tactics, leverage intelligence.
Yeah.
Really maximize the impact of the limited resources they have.
Exactly. Resourcefulness is key here.
Yeah, and we talked about Russia potentially shifting their strategy.
Right.
But it seems like Ukraine is having to do the same.
They have to adapt.
Adapt to the circumstances, figure out how to counter this larger, better equipped adversary.
And we can't forget about the international support.
Yeah, that's a huge factor.
They've been relying heavily on military and financial aid from their allies.
That's been essential.
Oh, absolutely. Crucial for their immediate needs on the battlefield, but also, for their long-term strategy.
It's such a big piece of this puzzle.
Yeah.
Not just for what they need right now,
Right.
but for how they plan for the future.
Absolutely. And that diplomatic pressure, the sanctions that come with that support, that's a key part of their calculations.
So even with all of the challenges that they're facing,
Right.
Ukraine's not just sitting back passively.
Oh, they're fighting back.
It's like this combination of strategic military maneuvers, reliance on that international support,
Yeah.
and just this sheer determination to resist.
They have shown incredible resilience throughout this whole conflict.
Absolutely.
And of course, we have to, address the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
The U.S. election. That's a big wild card.
Right.
A new administration
Could completely change the game.
could bring a whole new approach to the conflict.
Yeah, it feels like everyone's just kind of like holding their breath,
Yeah,
waiting to see what happens there.
absolutely.
And while this source doesn't give us any like specific insights
Yeah,
into Ukraine's future plans,
right.
their past actions and what they're dealing with now kind of gives us some clues
Yeah.
as to where things might be headed.
Yeah, you can kind of see the pattern, right? So they're probably going to keep prioritizing defense, looking for those opportunities to disrupt Russian advances. And I think we can expect them to keep seeking that international support,
Yeah.
both military and diplomatic.
Like this really complex chess match.
Oh!
Each side is adapting, trying to predict what the other one's going to do,
Right.
reacting to these unexpected developments,
Totally.
like a potential shift in U.S. policy.
It's so dynamic. There's no clear roadmap here.
Yeah.
There's no easy answers. Both sides are navigating a constantly shifting landscape,
Yeah.
making these decisions that could have huge consequences.
Global consequences.
Absolutely.
We've been exploring this really fascinating Thai perspective on the whole Russia-Ukraine conflict, and it's really just, brought to light how complex this whole thing really is.
Yeah, it's a lot more nuanced than I think people realize.
We've talked about, Putin's, pretty strong rhetoric and Russia's advancements on the ground, but of course, the big question mark is how the U.S. elections will play out.
Right. That's a big wild card for sure.
But something that really struck me is, how resilient Ukraine's been,
Yeah, it is quite remarkable.
especially when you consider all of the challenges that they're up against.
Especially with the resource limitations we were talking about. But they've held on longer than I think a lot of people expected.
And their willingness to strike back, like with that alleged drone attack on Kazan,
yeah,
speaks volumes, right?
for sure. That was a bold move.
So it makes you wonder what their long-term strategy is here.
Yeah, where do they go from here?
I mean, they're dealing with these manpower shortages and a lack of ammunition. So how do they keep this up?
Well, you have to think about the Western aid that they've been getting.
Right. That's a huge factor.
It's been crucial. It's really helped bolster their defenses. But beyond that, it seems like they're using tactics that really kind of highlight their strengths and exploit Russia's weaknesses.
So it's not just about holding the line.
No, it's about disrupting, making strategic strikes that have a bigger impact than you might expect.
Like hitting a target like Kazan, way back inside of Russia.
Yeah, think about what kind of message that sends.
That was a huge message.
It shows that they have reach, that they can hit back in unexpected ways, and that does something psychologically.
Oh, for sure. It makes Russia feel vulnerable.
Exactly. And it forces them to spend resources protecting their interior.
Which could stretch their forces thin, right?
Absolutely. It's textbook asymmetric warfare.
A weaker force using these unconventional tactics to even the odds.
Exactly.
And it's really interesting to see how they're adapting their strategy in real time
Yeah.
as the situation changes.
Constantly adjusting.
Yeah.
And we can't forget about the international support.
Oh, right. That's not just about weapons and money.
Exactly. It's about diplomatic pressure, the sanctions that come with it,
Right. Yes.
global condemnation.
All of that stuff weighs on Russia.
It shapes the whole strategic situation.
It's a reminder that this isn't just a military fight.
No, it's way bigger than that.
It's also a battle for global opinion
Right.
and a fight for economic leverage.
Yeah, and you have to say, on that front, Ukraine has been doing pretty well.
They've really managed to rally a lot of support.
Yeah, for sure.
And I keep thinking about the human cost of all of this.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, the source mentioned those manpower shortages.
Yeah.
That's not just a number, that's real people.
It's families being torn apart.
Communities disrupted.
Lives lost.
It's really heartbreaking.
It is. And while we're sitting here talking about all these high-level strategies,
Yeah.
you can't forget the immense suffering happening over there.
Yeah. It's easy to get lost in the analysis,
Right.
but you have to remember that behind all the headlines,
Yeah.
there are real human stories
Of courage
of resilience.
and loss.
So this deep dive has really been eye-opening for me.
I think it has been for all of us.
So this deep dive has really been eye-opening for me.
I think it has been for all of us.
We got into the facts of the conflict, but also the different ways people see it.
The strategies at play, the impact it's having on people.
Stuff we don't always see in the mainstream media.
Right, and that's what makes these other sources so valuable. They make you question your assumptions, think critically.
For sure.
It's a whole new perspective.
So as we wrap up this exploration of the Russia-Ukraine conflict through the eyes of Thai language news, what are some of the key takeaways you'd leave our listeners with?
Well, I think the biggest one is that this conflict is a lot more complicated and dynamic than it might seem on the surface.
Yeah, it's not just black and white.
There's so much going on militarily, politically, economically.
And it's important to look at it from different angles, challenge the way we think about it.
Absolutely, and keep seeking a better understanding of what's driving this conflict and what the outcomes might be.
Well said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a really thought-provoking conversation.
It really has.
And as always, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged. Please let me know if you have any more parts of the script that need to be rewritten, or if you have any other specific requests.